Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September edition of the Office of Admission at TCU Facebook Live. We are excited to be here. We're going to give it just a minute so people can enter our studio, and we are here to enlighten you on the elements of the application process as well as take all of your questions. We already have a bunch of questions that were submitted via Instagram, and we hope to get to all of those. But Mandy and I are excited to be here. We're going to give it another 30 seconds, and then we'll get going. In the meantime, please do tell us where you are joining us from. Hello, Sarah. It's good to see you from Kodiak. Good to see you again, this time via the internet as opposed to in person when we met last, saw each other. Carolina from Brazil. That's exciting. So many folks I see. Ashley's from Charlotte, North Carolina. Jennifer from the Bay Area up in California. Steve Chesterman from my home territory of Orange County, California. And others from that area too. Gretchen from Denver, Hadley in Atlanta. Elaine also from California. This is awesome. We're so excited to have you with us. So for those who have not joined us before, my name is Heath Einstein. I am Dean of Admission at TCU, and I am just delighted to be joined tonight by my partner in crime. Mandy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Bienvenidos a todos. Me llamo Mandy Castro y sirvo como la directora de admisión. Y si alguien necesita información en español, por favor, mándanos con frogmail@tcu.edu y les contestamos. My name is Mandy Castro, and I serve TCU as the Director of Undergraduate Admission, welcoming all of our Spanish speakers as well. And if you guys have questions that you want to submit to us outside of the Facebook Live, feel free to use frogmail@tcu.edu.
Awesome. Thank you, Mandy. Well, we like to start all of our programming, whether in person or virtually, with a land acknowledgement. And we respectfully acknowledge all Native American peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial. TCU especially acknowledges and pays respect to the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose historical homeland our university is located. When you are on campus next, which I hope is very soon, and we have visitors coming through all the time, I would encourage you to check out the monument that was erected about 3 years ago now, right in the space between Reed Hall and Jarvis Hall, so centrally located on campus, to acknowledge our historical relationship with the Wichita and affiliated tribes. To those of you who are joining us from the Gulf region whose lives have been uprooted in the wake of Hurricane Ida, or those who have family members affected, our hearts are with you this evening, and we are wishing you and your family only the best. This is the 6th in a series of monthly sessions that we have done. We started way back in March on the campus visit and standardized tests, and every month, with the exception of last month when we took our summer break, we have tackled a different topic in the field of college admission. And as we were brainstorming ideas for the September session, we thought, wouldn't it make a whole lot of sense to talk about the elements of the college application? Because our application just went live 1 month ago today. There is already robust activity in terms of students submitting their applications, but we know that most of the students who apply to TCU have not yet submitted their applications. They're still working on them. They still might have lots of questions. And so we wanted to take the time tonight to demystify the process and take each element as they come, and then really open it up to questions for you. If you're interested in learning about any of the topics that we've covered in the past Facebook Live sessions, you can go to the link, the URL that has been put up in front of you. If you want to hear about what course selection or building your resume, we certainly have tackled those, and you can learn more about it there. We're doing this because we've found that it's a lot of fun. We have fun doing it. I think that you have fun engaging with us in this way. It's really hard sometimes to get people on the phone or to meet with us in our office, or when we're traveling, just getting everyone to To get schedules that align can be difficult, but here we are all together, and it is evidence that we indeed are real people. The format for the next 55 minutes is unscripted, mostly. We have a few minutes of comments that Mandy and I are going to make, but really we want to hear from you. We want to know what questions you have, and we want to be able to respond to those essentially in real time. If we veer into other aspects of the admission process, that's okay too. We're going to try to focus on the elements of the application as well. It's scheduled to go till 7 o'clock Central Daylight Time, which is, again, 55 minutes from now. If we spill over a minute or two, that's okay. If it doesn't last that long, that's okay too. I also finally want to thank a couple of folks who are working behind the scenes. You don't see them right now, but Rob Berline from Alumni Relations and Liz Rainwater in the Office of Admission are the real stars tonight, trying to, holding all of this together. Okay, so Mandy and I have a few brief thoughts that we want to share with you. I want to start by showing you a graphic on the number of applications that we have received over the last 5 years. This is from the fall 17 through the fall 21 application cycles. That fall 21 cycle means current first-year students and transfer students at TCU. And you can see some really interesting numbers here. Namely, we are darn consistent. Over the last 5 years, we have gotten anywhere from 20,000 plus total applications to about 22,000. There is a 2,000 application range between our lowest and highest. Everything falls within there. So that's a pretty negligible difference. Sometimes we're a little bit higher than other years on the first year side, sometimes a little bit higher than other years on the transfer side, but pretty consistent numbers. And I think that that's a really important number, especially as we've been going through over the last 18 months, this global pandemic, that the consistent interest in TCU and high interest is a strong sign that the brand, the TCU brand, is really strong. This is a desirable place to be. That makes our job fun. It also makes our job really challenging. So what is it that we are looking for in an application? I'm going to show you another chart. It's a pie graph that illustrates to you essentially what it is that we take into consideration when we are evaluating students for first year admission to TCU. We're going to focus on the first year process initially. And you can see here, and while we don't have a formula, this is illustrative, that the bulk of the application will come down to the academic performance of the student. And when we say academics, that's a combination of the transcript, which is a reflection of 4 years of high school, and if the student chooses to submit test scores as well. Okay, so I think that's really interesting. We also take into account, obviously, co-curricular activities because we're an active campus and we want to know the ways in which you've been active during your high school years. We look at your writing and letters of recommendation. We're going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail. So let's start with just the application itself. When you choose to apply to TCU, you can select one of several different application platforms or application types. You can use something called the Common Application. That is a generic document that's accepted by about 950 or 1,000 different colleges primarily in the United States. There are a couple even outside the United States that accept the Common Application. It is a generic document. You fill it out one time and then send it to all of the colleges you want to apply to that are members of the Common Application. If you submit the Common Application, very often, and TCU is included in this group, member institutions will ask what are called custom questions, or sometimes referred to as supplemental questions. So in addition to the essay that you're writing, there may be some short answer responses that you're also asked to submit. So that's one application type. The second application type is called the Coalition for College. It is another type of application that is a member group. There are fewer members there. If you're applying to schools that only accept the Coalition for College application, then you could choose to use that. The third application is something called Apply Texas. If you are a resident of the state of Texas, you are likely familiar with this. If you are not from Texas, you might be familiar with it. It is like the Common App or the Coalition in that there are lots of different schools that subscribe to it, although in this case with Apply Texas, only Texas colleges. Every college in Texas, with the exception of one or maybe two, use Apply Texas. And then finally, we have our own homegrown application, which you can find on our website. So any of those four applications are fine with us. We show no preference to the students who choose one over the other. In fact, when we sign up as a member of these different application groups, we actually sign a document that says we're not going to show favoritism to students who use one over the other. Okay, the next element of the application that I want to touch upon is that essay, that personal statement that you're required to submit for us and for many other colleges, especially selective colleges. And we did a whole session on this. So again, if you want to refer back to the blog that we wrote or back to the original Facebook Live session, you can learn a lot more there. The essay is your opportunity to tell us about yourself in your own words. This is the part of the application that really you control. The other parts of the application process, the transcript, letters of recommendation, etc., those are things that either you have accomplished or somebody else is saying about you, but the essay is your time to say whatever it is you would like. And the best advice we can offer is to just be yourself, be your authentic self. Don't try to write something that you think we want to see, because the chances are we've seen the topic before. There are only so many things that high school students typically will write about, but you want to put your own spin on it. You want to tell your story. You want us to get to know you in a way that we couldn't just by reading other parts of your application. So sometimes the simplest idea can be the best idea. If you go into it attempting to write the world's greatest college essay, that can be a tall order. But if you go into it just saying, you know what, I want to let these people know a little bit more about me, I think that can be really successful. I also want to touch on test scores. As I already noted, for TCU this year, the submission of standardized exams, the ACT and SAT, is optional. It was optional last year as well, and it's going to be optional next year as well. We've already committed, even for the class of 2023, the graduating class of 2023, high school class that is, that we will not require the submission of standardized tests. We did this in the wake of the pandemic when test administrations were being canceled, and we found that last year it actually was quite freeing for our counselors. We were able to focus on other parts of the application, and we were able to, frankly, admit a whole different range of students. It was really exciting for our team. Some people will ask, well, okay, it's test optional, but what does that really mean? Do I need to, don't I still need to submit it? And the answer is no. Optional means optional. So I want to show you a couple of graphics about test scores. So test scores were not used for 51% of admitted students last year. Okay, over half of the students who were admitted to TCU did not have test scores. So you should feel really good about the fact that if you feel like your test scores don't reflect or not an accurate reflection of your ability, your potential, and that your grades are really a better reflection of that, and you want that to support your sort of academic portfolio, then go ahead and do that. The other graphic, which I think is really interesting, or equally, if not more interesting, is that test scores were not used for 73% of scholarship recipients. Think about that. Of all the students who got scholarships at TCU, those who were admitted and admitted with a scholarship, nearly 3/4 of those students did not submit test scores. So we truly mean optional when we say that this is optional. You're not going to be penalized by not having a test score. Okay, I want to touch on letters of recommendation. Many colleges require them. We require letters of recommendation, one from your school counselor and one from a teacher of your choice. It is, I think, standard for a student to get a letter of recommendation from a teacher in a core academic subject and from a teacher who taught you in 11th or 12th grade. If you go back to a teacher who taught you in 10th grade, by the time we're reviewing you for your application, we're now a couple of years removed from that experience. By the time you start college, you're now more than 2 years removed from the classroom experience as a high school sophomore. We want to get to know what you were like in the classroom more recently. So that's the best advice we can give you. Now, if you've got a teacher you had in sophomore year and you've remained close with them even outside the classroom, and you want to ask them to submit a letter that as part of your application, that could be a great supplemental letter to get. Mandy, I know you've got some thoughts on letters of recommendation as well.
Right. Lawton just asked a question of how many letters of recommendation we would need. And Dean Einstein answered that. It should be from a teacher and a counselor. We require 2, and we'll accept another one if you have another one that really you feel like your application is incomplete without. I do want to remind you that although your teachers and counselors may write these letters and hand them to you, we do not take them submitted by the student. So you will need to submit those through, the student will need to have the recommender submit those to us, preferably through frogmail@tcu.edu. We've mentioned that email address over and over again. There it is on the screen for you once again. This is how we will receive many of the documents that you'll submit. So in addition to letters of recommendation that highlight who you are, and we want you to be able to find people who know you, like Dean Einstein was saying, but not simply by a resume that you hand them. So that personal account really does add value when we review an admission application. So moving on from from letters of recommendation, I want to touch on the high school transcript. So students ask us all the time, what are you looking for? And did I need to take 5, 7 AP classes or be in an international baccalaureate graduation program in order to gain admission to TCU? And the truth is no, we actually are looking for a really well-rounded student in the way of academics. So we want you to challenge yourself in the space that you're talented in. We don't necessarily need you to accumulate 7, 10, 12 honors and advanced placement courses just to prove you're academically ready for a school like TCU. We're looking for you to meet the curricular requirements of your high school. We prefer to see students who have stayed in a math and a science class for all 4 years. And then we would really like to see how you're doing in your foreign languages, in a language other than English, and preferably over 2 years of involvement. So that said, people say, well, our school weights our grade point average. What are you going to do with it? And we will take into consideration that the school does weight the GPA. However, to standardize from the United States and across the world, everything that's coming into us, we are going to unweight the GPA on a 4.0 scale, making an A 4 points, a B as 3 points, and down the line. So when we do that, it seems like I did all this work in high school and you're going to penalize me for it. And really the truth of that is no, we value the strength that you have chosen to challenge yourself with, so much so that we're going to consider that external to just the grades that you receive. So all of those things together will make up that big purple part of the pie that we showed you earlier. So equally important are your grades. I know Dean Einstein mentioned the true option of tests. If it enhances your application, by all means, submit it. If it doesn't, then we're going to consider your application just based on what you've done in the classroom. So there's a little asterisk under the pie chart that we showed you that says, other forms or other items are considered as additional points of interest. And I want to touch just briefly on this. We offer students the ability to show us a freedom of expression piece. And a freedom of expression is a way for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself that we haven't been able to read in the black and white part of your application for admission. So some students will have a piece that they've written that they'd like to submit. Others have been involved in something that was, for instance, dance that they've done for years. They're not going to continue that hobby while in college, but it was such a pivotal part of who they were as a high school student. They want to show us that, and they may upload a video. This is an optional piece as well. And I think that what we're going to underscore here as we talk about TCU is optional truly means optional. So we have a graphic here that shows you that 7% of our applicants this past year submitted a freedom of expression piece. So don't try to read between the lines thinking that you're going to be precluded from admission just because you didn't choose to do this additional step. We want to just give you the third dimension of the application in your ability to show us who you are. Additionally, of the 7% of applicants who submitted a freedom of expression, only 8% of our admitted students did the same. So it's cool to get to see that other side of you, but please don't stress over this. If there's a piece of your application that you feel would be enhanced with a video, with a commentary, with something that shows us that other side of you, submit it and we'll consider it. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Heath. I want to underscore yet again that optional truly does mean optional here at TCU.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Mandy, because sometimes people hear that and they don't absorb it. In fact, we just, Mandy and I were laughing about this the other day because we found something written by a college, an independent college counselor who was saying to students, TCU has this optional piece, but they really mean you should do it. And we called them out on it. We said, that's not true. Our data supports that actually optional means optional. So please don't tell your students that. So we have been on this kick to really get the word out on optional meaning optional. I want to touch a little bit on the application rounds. Like, when do you actually apply? We have a couple of different deadlines, and we have a new application round this year that I wanted to mention as well. So first of all, our November 1 deadline, which is 2 months from today, is for both our early decision, that is a binding application, and our early action, that is non-binding. Binding means if you are admitted, you are obligated to submit your enrollment deposit and attend TCU. So that's a pretty serious commitment. You have to know that TCU is absolutely where you want to be. So serious, in fact, that we ask students who apply early decision to sign a document saying that they'll withdraw their applications from other schools. A parent or guardian has to sign that as well, and the school counselor has to sign it so that everybody is on the same page with the understanding of that commitment. Early action is the non-binding one. With both applications, you're going to hear back from us no later than January 1st, and we usually try to get those decisions out a little earlier in December. It really just depends on what volume of applications we see and our personnel and how quickly we can get through everything. Historically, there is a bit of a statistical advantage to applying early decision because those are the students who are most eager to be at TCU. And we want students who are eager to be at TCU. And so if you're going to show us the love that you want to be here, then we're going to reciprocate to some degree. Now, having said that, you still have to be admissible to the university. We're not admitting students early decision just because they're applying then. And we have made a commitment to cap enrollment so that we're not admitting a very high percentage of our class early decision. There are colleges out there that will admit 40 or 50% of their entire incoming class in that early round, that early decision round, which is typically a much smaller pool of students. And we just felt like, from an access perspective, that's not an ethical thing to do. If we want to be a place that students can attend, we can't say, well, the only way to get here is if you have the money to put down upfront. So we will not admit more than 20% of our total incoming first-year class via early decision. We then have a February 1 deadline, and that is for regular decision, as well as now an early decision round 2. And the reason why we added a second round of early decision this year is because we know that there are students who decide sometime after November 1st that TCU is their top choice. Maybe they haven't had a chance to visit campus yet before November 1st of their senior year. And they do finally come for a visit in that November Monday at TCU or some other point in November, December, or January, and they have this aha moment and decide, this is where I want to be. We want to give those students an opportunity to raise their hands and say, this is my top choice, I'm committing, and this is where I really want to be. So we're excited to see what that second round of early decision adds this year. Mandy, do you want to touch on students being able to access us now?
Yeah, I just heard you say when you come to campus, you have that aha moment. And I'm going to make a small shameless plug to come to campus so you too can have that aha moment. And that's not a plug for an early decision application, by the way. We truly want you to see what it is that's going on our campus. So I am in charge of what's called student search. And this is where colleges and universities try to find students to fill our halls. We are looking for students that are just like you, students who have challenged themselves academically, who have performed in school to the best of their ability, the students who are involved, who have something to give to an institution. And there are different gateways by which students reach out to us. Some of them do take a campus tour, others will find us on the internet and submit a form. Others will walk past us in a college fair or a high school visit, or even on a Facebook Live and say, hey, I want to give my information to you because I want you to reach back out to me. That's wonderful. Students also, I find students through testing services. So if you've taken an ACT or an SAT and you've not hidden your information, so you've made it available for us to see, I might be able to find you that way. Also, you could use resources like Big Futures or the Niche platform and raise your hand and say, I want more information from this school. And by doing so, we get to communicate with you. Liz is behind the scenes right now, and she's like, yes, tell us who you are. That also means that you may be responsible at a college fair or an information session to scan a QR code and enter the information. Please don't bypass this step. We want to know not only that you're interested, but that we've seen you. And we get to say, oh, hey, thanks for visiting me at a fair. Do you have any more questions? And do you have time that you would want to set aside to chat sometimes? So I just want to let you guys know we're looking for you and we want to find you, and make yourself available through any of those platforms and let us find you as much as you're finding us. It's a mutual search process. I know that it's super stressful for you all, but we don't want the applicant pool to dry up. We want to find you where you are, and we want to tell you why we think that you would be a great fit at TCU.
All right. We want to answer your questions now, and you've already sent in a lot of them, and so we're going to get to as many as possible. I'm going to answer some. Mandy's going to answer some. And I want to start with a question that Kate Holland had asked on Instagram even before the session started, and it touches on something that I just talked about with early decision. And Kate asks, are the chances of getting money off of your tuition decreased when you do early decision? This is such a thoughtful, insightful question. Because you might say to yourself, well, if TCU knows that I'm obligated to enroll if I'm admitted, why would they give me any scholarship money at all? I understand that line of thinking. The reason we would give you a scholarship is because you've earned the scholarship. And we feel strongly that it would be unethical to charge students something different just because they have put themselves on the line and said, I'm definitely enrolling. So as we talked about, every student who is admitted to TCU is automatically considered for academic scholarship. That does not matter when you submit your application. The amount you receive is the same whether you apply on September 1st or you apply on February 1st. So great question, Kate. Thank you for asking that. Mandy, we had a question on Instagram that Linnea had asked, which is, can I submit my website with my original music composition for freedom of expression? You talked about freedom of expression, so can you answer that question?
Absolutely. If you're submitting something to us on a Google form or a Google Doc, make sure you unlock it before you send it to us. Otherwise, we're not able to access it. But yes, send us your URL. If we can click on that and see your original works, we'll learn more about you.
Awesome. Okay. Leslie on Instagram asked, what is the average test score range of students who are accepted? The range on the ACT, that middle 50% of students we end up enrolling at TCU have between an 1150 and a 1340. And that middle 50% on the ACT is 26 to 31. Keep in mind, however, that we are test optional. So you don't have to submit those your test scores. But those are, I think, good benchmarks for you to think about. Let's say you're a really strong student in the classroom and you're wondering, should I submit or shouldn't I submit? Those ranges can help you figure out whether that's something you want to present to us. The other thing that is critical for you to understand, and I should have mentioned this before, is that we have something called a do no harm policy. So there really is no downside to submitting your scores. If you're wondering, should I or shouldn't I, go ahead and submit them. Because if you do submit them and they're not necessarily up to the profile of the average applicant in this applicant pool, we're essentially going to ignore it and focus on the other strengths of your application. So definitely go ahead and submit those scores. Okay, Mandy, Emily asked us, where do you submit the nursing supplement questions if they're not on the Common Application?
You didn't find them? No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't find them either. I was looking for them.
Emily, you're not going crazy. We actually have the nursing supplements as well as our honors college application that live in our portal. Now, every student who applies to TCU will have access to their TCU portal, and we want you to use that to submit the nursing supplement and the application for the honors college. You'll also refer back to this, and this is where you'll receive your admission decisions, scholarship notifications. So be familiar with the student portal. I will say right now, if you have applied through Apply Texas, they've had some problems with the data exchange. So if you haven't received your login for your portal yet, it may be because we're still trying to match the data from Apply Texas. If you've submitted an application and actually gone through and hit submit, not just started the application, you should receive notification from us on how to set up your portal. Emily, if you have any problems with it and you can't find it, shoot us an email. We'll help you figure it out.
Okay, Laura Fisher asks, would it make a difference if a student took statistics instead of calculus senior year? I love these questions, and because curriculum choices can matter. And the answer to this particular question is, it depends. So it's hard to know in a vacuum whether that particular choice is going to impact the admission decision. Part of it, a big part of it, will depend on two factors. One, what other classes have you chosen to take? So if you've got a lot of rigorous coursework under your belt in addition to your math class, and you decided, you know what, I'd rather take statistics instead of calculus because I think that will help create more balance in my workload, that would be absolutely fine. The other factor is what academic program you're interested in at TCU. So, for example, if you're interested in studying nursing at TCU, which is a very popular program, we really like to see statistics. Our nursing program has said that is a really important class to predict student success. If a student has done well, is just taken statistics and hopefully does well in it, then they're very likely to do well in the nursing program. On the other hand, if you are interested in pursuing physics as a major, then you would be better served choosing calculus in your senior year instead of statistics. So it really does depend, I think, largely on those two factors. Okay. Let's get to the next question. Mandy, I'm going to throw this one at you. And it's an interesting one, and that is, what makes an attractive candidate? And I know this is like a really tough question to answer. So I want to hear what you have to say, and then I might float some ideas as well. What's the most attractive thing on an application?
I think that the authenticity that students show us is the most attractive thing. Really, the market that you have cornered and the only market you have cornered is your story. So we're looking for, you're all required to take the same type of classes, 4 English classes, at least 3 math classes, a number of social studies and science, etc. And we can see your academic progress. But all of those things equal, we're looking for students who can tell their story. I don't want you to get overwhelmed by thinking, oh my gosh, we hit a pandemic and I didn't get to volunteer. So my volunteerism looks really low and that doesn't make me a well-rounded student. We want you to be academically well-rounded. As far as a student who excels in fine arts and you're coming to be a performer on our campus, that's what we are looking for in your application. For a student who excels in something completely different, that's okay. I hear Dean Einstein say all the time, lots of angles make a well-rounded class. So it's okay to be angular in your application. It's okay to have had the majority of your involvement be in the band. It's okay for you to have worked part-time and contributed to your family, and for that to play into your application for admission. We just want you to tell your story, and I feel like that's the most attractive part of the students, and that's what makes them stand out.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Mandy, and so I'm not even going to try. Okay, Wendy asks, has your yield changed over the past 5 years? That's such a great question, and Wendy must be somebody who is a keen observer of college enrollment and admissions. And for those who are not aware, yield is the percentage of students who accept our offer of admission. And the answer is that over the last 5 years, it hasn't changed too dramatically. In a typical year, we will rather see a yield that is somewhere between 22 and 26%. So that's about a 4% band where our yield would be. So essentially, 1 out of every 4 to 5 students we offer admission to is going to choose to come to TCU. The other 3 or 4 students are going to make the mistake of going somewhere else. I'm joking. That you should be comfortable with whatever decision you make to go to college. Lots of great schools out there. Okay, but this is why it's important. Why yield is really important. We build our enrollment model on a set of assumptions, and part of the assumption we make is yield. What do we think is going to happen? And of course, if you've ever tried to guess 9 months out the way a 17-year-old is going to react, you know that that's a very difficult task, if not impossible. And if we're off by just 1%, when we've made 10,000 offers of admission, that means we're over enrolling or under enrolling by 100 students. And that's a lot. And so that's why you see from time to time colleges slightly over enroll, slightly under enroll, or in some cases, greatly over enroll or under enroll. This year, this class that we have just welcomed onto campus, this first year class, is a really good example of that. We over enrolled the class. And that's a good problem to have, but it's a problem still because there are all sorts of downstream effects. Do we have enough housing? Are there enough classrooms? And do we have enough faculty? And all sorts of ripple effects that occur as a result of that. The reason for that this year was there's no blueprint for how to go through an admission cycle during a global pandemic. And we had made the assumption that we might need to make a few more offers than we usually do because students might choose not to go to college this year, or they might choose to go closer to home, or they might choose to go to a different school for all sorts of reasons. We ended up making slightly more offers of admission than we actually needed to. But we're very excited to have our first year Horned Frogs. And yes, they all have housing. And I know there was another question in here about the whether we ever have a housing shortage. And while we have residence halls that are designed for a certain number of students, there is capacity for more students than that when we run into a situation like this year. So we're in really good shape. Okay, Mandy, let me ask you this question. Well, I'm not asking the question, actually. It's Naara who's asking the question, and that is, can you still be considered for the Chancellor Scholarship without submitting your test score? And actually, let me ask you to first define what the Chancellor Scholarship is.
Sure. The Chancellor Scholarship is a full tuition scholarship program at TCU. It's the only competitive program that we have. So I say that in the sense that we will not award every student who meets the criteria. And this past year, we actually had to revise our review process to accommodate the number of students who were eligible without test scores. So the answer to your question, Nara, is, can you be considered? Yes. And did we award students without test scores? Absolutely. So we are a school who de-emphasized test scores long before we gave students the option to not use them. So it's easy for us to identify those students who are at the highest caliber and can compete for the Chancellor Scholarship even without the test score.
Excellent. Okay, Lori asked, does TCU conduct interviews of prospective students as part of the application process? I'm very glad you asked this question, Lori, because we have eliminated the interview as part of our process. And we did that, going back to a point I made earlier, primarily for access reasons. We know that there are lots of students who want to be in contact with us who don't have the opportunity to interview. And very often the students who know to interview are the same students who know all sorts of things because they have access to quality counseling and other resources that just give them an advantage that other students didn't have. The other thing that we found was that a lot of the students who were choosing to interview with us were doing so because they felt like they needed to sort of go that extra mile to show that they really loved TCU, when we actually knew that they loved TCU by all sorts of other actions that they were taking. They were meeting us at college fairs. They were attending the high school visits when we were visiting their schools. They were reaching out to us via email. And so the interview was, in essence, another way for them to check a box that they had done something. But that really didn't help in the evaluation process, because a lot of those students, they were going to be admitted anyway. They were going to come to TCU anyway. So we felt like it's a better use of the students' time to not have to go through the interview, and it's a better use of our time as well, so we can focus on other parts of the process. So thank you for asking that question. We still are here for you, absolutely. Our counselors are available anytime. So if you've got questions or just want to say hello, we are here, and you can reach out to your counselor. And if you don't know who your assigned counselor is, by the way, you can go to the Meet Your Counselor page on the admissions website, and you can, with just a couple of clicks, find out who that person is. Okay, so
Heath,
Mandy, do you want to add something else?
one comment on that. In the vein of access, we did eliminate the interview. Additionally, I want to make sure that we don't overlook the fact that if any student is first generation, or if students have been enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program or have financial hardships that we need to consider, we will waive your application fee for admission. So I know that how did we forget that? We talk about these things all the time, but I want to make sure that I do mention that.
Thank you. We also waive the application fee for veterans. So if you are a current or former service member, then you will have your application fee waived as well. Okay. Gina asks, I'll pose this question to you, Mandy. How much consideration do you put towards admitting siblings of current or former families? And maybe just generally talk about sort of family ties, or what's called legacy.
Right. TCU has a long history of students and family members attending. We love to see purple families come through the application pool. Are those students weighted outside of consideration in a way that others are not? The answer is no. We look at students across the board. We love the family ties. If it's a great student who earns entrance on their own, absolutely. Is the family tie going to get you into TCU? That's not the way that we're reviewing students for admission. So I don't want to say that there's no weight given. There's not a rubric scale that I can say 2% is given to somebody who's a legacy. Really, we want to admit the right students to TCU who are going to get involved in our campus, to play into our strategic plan, to look for their fit, and to help us kind of push the walls and the ceilings and figure out who we can be as a better institution. So yeah, let's keep purple in the family if we can, but earn entrance on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another access piece, right? If we only admitted students who had ties to TCU, we'd never be able to expand sort of open the tent of who TCU is. Okay, Jack Storer asks, is there a separate application for the Honors College compared to not Honors College? There is an additional supplemental application for the John V. Roach Honors College. And just to take a step back, the Honors College is a wonderful academic and co-curricular experience for students who really love trying to, find the bonds that bring that connective tissue that brings seemingly disparate fields together. The way I describe it is, if you're the kind of student who loves to sort of just stay up really late at night going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole, just trying to absorb as much knowledge as you can for knowledge's sake, not because it's for a grade, then the Honors College is going to be right up your alley. So if you choose to apply to the Honors College, then after you submit your application, much like the nursing supplement, you'll find that there's a link on the portal for you to respond to a couple of short answer questions that the Honors College faculty will review, and then we will offer an invitation based on that. Students who are in the Honors College are also simultaneously enrolled in one of the other degree granting colleges at the university. So it's not an Honors College versus being in some other college. It's on top of being in one of the other areas of study that is of interest to you. Okay, let's see. Mandy, Candace is asking, if my student is applying or auditioning for the theater department, are they still eligible for early decision? And when does the theater department release their acceptances?
What a great question. Yes, the students can apply early decision. they may not know the outcome of their audition and acceptance into the school, and specifically the program, until later in the spring semester. If it's my understanding, and you can correct me, Dean Einstein, that they do wait until they've auditioned all of the students to start making the final decisions for theater.
That's mostly true. Yes. I mean, they may have one or two who are just like so far above
Yes.
that they want to reach out ahead of time. But yes, they really do try to see everybody before.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's going to be there are differences. And so within the College of Fine Arts, there are several departments that require audition. Music, theater, and dance are the three. And their processes are a little bit different. So but Mandy's absolutely right when it comes to theater. Okay, so Ashley asks a great question, which is, how should we determine if we should apply to the Honors College? Mandy, do you want to take that? I already touched a little bit on the Honors College, but what advice would you give to a student on how do I know if this is what I should be doing?
First, I would say come to one of our Monday at TCU programs if you're able to, and sit in one of our honors information sessions. Additionally, the Honors College will offer some virtual sessions throughout the course of the semester that you can tune into just to have a Q&A, kind of like we're doing now, specifically with the Honors College. Sometimes students are concerned, and rightfully so, that they're moving to a new place, they're embarking on a new academic challenge, and will it be too much? It might be, or it might not be. The great thing about our honors program is there's a couple of different levels of involvement and grade point averages that can grant you a distinction at the honors level. So you'd have to do a little bit of soul searching, as well as time management and being very real with yourself. The application never hurts. If selected for the Honors College, you can choose to accept your spot in the Honors College, or you can choose to just continue your education at TCU.
Great. Okay, Allison asks, if you got denied the first round of early decision, can you reapply in February? That way I could also provide more of my senior grades. This is a great question because it's actually going to lead to a larger answer beyond exactly what you asked, which is, what are the different possible outcomes that could happen when I apply? And is it different early decision versus early action, et cetera? So the answer to your question is no, you cannot reapply once you've been denied admission to the university. Once that happens, you need to attend another university. And if you want to reapply, it would be as a transfer student to TCU. When you apply early decision, because you have demonstrated to us that this is where you want to be, we feel an obligation to give you a decision that is either admit or deny. That if it's not going to happen, then we don't want to kick the can down the road and keep you emotionally attached to the university when, frankly, your best chance of admission, as I mentioned earlier, is in that early decision round. That is different from the early action round, where there are three potential outcomes. Two, I've already mentioned, admission or denial to the university. The third is what we call defer. Sometimes we will say to students who apply early action, we need more information. And so we're going to defer your application to a later round. And the additional information we need is, number one, from you, how have you fared that first semester, which Allison, you alluded to in your question. And the second bit of information you can't provide, but we need to know, is what does the rest of our applicant pool look like? We need that bigger picture to see whether your academic credentials and co-curricular accomplishments and everything else we've talked about qualifies you for admission to the university. So sometimes our students will be deferred to that next round if they apply early action. I want you to be aware that that's a possibility, and that at TCU, that does not mean you're still going to be denied. We're just delaying the inevitable. That is the case at some schools. There are some schools that they defer students. Sometimes it's just a real soft deny, and then you'll eventually get the deny letter, and they only end up admitting like 5 kids who've been deferred. That's not the case with us. We routinely will admit 25, 30, 35% of the students who are initially deferred. We just need that additional information to confirm that we're making that right decision, because we want to make the best decision for the institution, but we also want to make the best decision for you, the applicant. Allison, if we felt like senior year grades would be helpful, that means that you are close enough that we might admit you. If senior grades wouldn't be helpful, then we would just deny you if you apply early decision. So we really do, with ED round, want to give that that up or down vote. Okay, we only have 10 minutes left. I can't believe how quickly this is flying by, but I want to get to still as many questions as we can. Okay, Mandy, I'm going to give this one to you. Paige asks us, what criteria are used to identify candidates for the Chancellor Scholar?
We are looking for students who, we joke around, like, who has the X factor? We're looking for students' leadership for the Chancellor Scholar Award. We're looking at very high academic standards. If they submit tests, very strong test scores, great rank in their class. Often these students have done some type of outside involvement in the academic realm. Many of them are what we would call intellectually curious. They're the ones like Dean Einstein was talking about with the Wikipedia rabbit hole. Twitter is my rabbit hole. All on our Wikipedia as well. But we're looking for those students that are just that are the top-notch students who are academically qualified, who are leaders, and those students will be evaluated in a number of rounds, and we will finally land on an audience who we will invite for interviews. At the point of interview, that's when kind of the rubber meets the road, and you're interviewing with faculty and staff and students on campus. And at that time, the outcome of those interviews will determine who's awarded the Chancellor Scholarship.
Yeah, I like to describe it in this way. You may be familiar with, for those of you who took poetry at any point in high school, Henry David Thoreau has this famous line where he says, "I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life." And to me, the Chancellor Scholars are the students who are sucking the marrow out of TCU. Those are, if that's you and you've got the academic chops, then those are the students who are going to really stand out to us. Okay, Mandy, the next question, Claire asks, can you get into both the nursing school and the honors college? We talked about both of them having that supplement. Can you do both?
Absolutely.
Yeah, easy one, right?
Easy. Rapid fire.
It just means that if you apply on November 1st, you only have 2 weeks to now do 2 sets of supplemental questions. So if you plan to do that, then I would say try to get your application in a little earlier. Okay, Santos asks, my daughter started at TCU. Is my son still considered first generation? The answer is yes. It is that entire generational line that would be first gen. So if parents did not graduate from college, then the student is first generation, irrespective of what the sibling has done. Okay, we've spent most of the time talking about first year admission. Chandler asks, what do you look for in a transfer application, Mandy?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking this, Chandler. TCU is a very transfer-friendly institution. We're looking for students who have completed a minimum of 1 long semester after high school graduation. We're looking also for a minimum of 12 credit hours. If you're looking at maybe transferring to TCU within the next semester, I would encourage you to reach out to our transfer team. And they've got a cool email as well, transferfrog@tcu.edu, and they would be happy to walk you through the course curriculum that you're selecting. We don't want you to take 12 hours and then they not all transfer, but we are looking for a minimum of 12 credit hours. If you have the 12 credit hours and a solid grade point average and can be admitted to one of our programs, they're very, very transparent. You can check our website. I won't bore you with all of the nuances, but they're very transparent. If you have the GPA, you can get in. Also, transfer scholarships work in the same way. So I would encourage you to take a look at them. Our scholarships will run up to 4 years or bachelor's degree completion, whichever comes first. That's to say, if you've already started someplace else and you're looking to bring those credits to TCU, if it takes you longer than 2 years while you're here, we want to make sure that you can cover that academically as well as financially. So we're looking for the best fit students in the transfer world as well. We do have one application for transfer, and that is on our TCU homepage. So click when you get to the landing page and it says apply, click apply, and then the student type, say I'm transferring from another institution.
Okay, about 5 minutes left, so keep those questions coming. We're going to get to as many as we can. A couple of folks asked questions, I think, in response to my comment about this entering first year class being a little bit bigger than previous years, wondering, okay, what does that mean for next year? Does that mean we're necessarily going to bring in a smaller class? And the answer is, as of right now, our plan is to bring in a slightly smaller class than what we were hoping for this year. But keep in mind, if you go back and sort of zoom out 30,000 feet, our classes have been consistently bigger in recent years from what traditionally we were seeing. We were, by mandate of the Board of Trustees, trying to get to a point where we had about 10,000 undergrads and about 11,500 total students. When the numbers are crunched, which will happen here in the next couple of weeks, we will have official numbers that we print and put on our website. We're going to be right about there, right about what the board set. And so what that means is we're going to be, and our plan as of right now is to be in a fairly consistent space. So for future years, we don't anticipate bringing in classes that are bigger and bigger and bigger, but merely staying sort of where we are. That's what we're more or less budgeting for.
One of the great things that the board had mentioned also was to maintain the student to professor ratio. So we will maintain the 14:1 student to professor ratio.
Right. Okay, Mandy, Lisa asks, does interest in a specific major improve our admission chances?
What a great question. Lisa, we do review your admission application based on the major that you choose at the point of admission. Now, I say that, and I also want to pull back. Students change their majors all the time. We do have capacity in certain programs that we are trying to maintain, so we can maintain that student to professor ratio, and we will consider the major that you select. Now, if there is if you gain admission as a business major and all of a sudden you decide that you want to do something different, you can request that major change from us. If we're able to accommodate you with space, then we would make that change. Otherwise, you're always welcome to switch to an undeclared major. And at that point, you could come to TCU, complete some of the core requirements, meet with academic advisors, and explore your other major opportunities.
Wonderful. Okay, Sarah Scott from Kodiak, Alaska asks, if only 20% of the early decision applicants are admitted, could a promising student run the risk of being denied if the school exceeds its 20% cap? I just want to clarify what I meant by that 20% mark. I didn't mean that your chances of admission are 20%. We're not admitting 1 out of 5 students. What I mean is of all of the students who come into TCU next year, a maximum of 20% of those students will be among that early decision pool. And I can say that with confidence because in the entire time we've had early decision, which is 7 or 8 years now, we haven't reached a situation where we have a ton of super qualified students who we had to turn away just because they applied early. If we got to that point, Sarah, I think we would reevaluate and then see if maybe instead of doing admit or deny, we might have to defer some of those students so that they do have a chance later on down the line. But that's not something that we've ever really even had to discuss, just by virtue of the size of our early decision pool, which is fairly small, and that's a good thing. That's an okay thing. We realize that with the cost of attendance at TCU being what it is, most families can't commit up front without knowing what their scholarship and aid package is going to be. And speaking of scholarship, I do want to emphasize that students get scholarship even if they choose not to submit their test scores. I want to say that because it bears repeating over and over and over again. And that includes, by the way, our Chancellor Scholarship. We have students who earned the Chancellor Scholarship last year without submitting or without having their test scores reviewed as part of that process. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have time for one last question, and I think this is a great one to end on, Mandy. I'll throw it to you. Rachel asks, do transfer students have fun opportunities just like the first-year students do, like frog camp, orientation, and all the social activities that are on our campus?
Absolutely. And Rachel, we have a new transfer center that is designed specifically for transfer students to help you plug in. You'll find that Stefan, and I will trip over his last name, I think it's Altaid, um, is our transfer student coordinator in our student affairs division, and he will do a great job of making sure that transfer students are plugged in. Now, there's two parts to this. You will have the opportunity to do frog camp and advising and orientation and all the things that the first year students do. And you can do them with other transfer students, or you can choose to do them just with everybody. So it's not a division line at TCU. It's an opportunity for you to step into whichever camp is most comfortable for you.
Okay, well, sadly, we have reached the end of our hour. We had such a great time. I can't speak for you, Mandy. I had a great time. Did you have a great time?
I had a great time.
Okay, good. I'm glad. So I can speak for you. Thank you for joining us, for being our special guest this month. Please come back next month. Our October Facebook Live will be back and better than ever. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, please reach out to us, frogmail@tcu.edu. You can call us at 817-257-7490. We love talking to you. You can come to campus. Please attend a Monday at TCU or one of our daily visit programs. You can go to our website to register for one of those. And above all else, we wish you peace and health and safety, and go Frogs.